Good afternoon. Welcome to TNCRadio.live. This is the Truckers Network Radio Show. And now here's your host, Shelley Johnson.
Thank you, Tom. This is the Truckers Network Radio Show on TNCRadio.live, where we offer the entertainment, sports, weather, traffic, news, and information that our commercial drivers want to hear. Chronic pain and fatigue are some common complaints among drivers. Dr. Jacob Teitelbaum is an integrative pain and fibromyalgia medical authority who's written numerous books, including Pain-Free 123, From Fatigue to Fantastic, The Complete Guide to Beating Sugar Addiction, and Diabetes is Optional. He's the lead author of 7 studies on effective treatment for fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. He's appeared on Dr. Oz, Oprah Friends, CNN, and Fox News Health. Dr. Teitelbaum is with us today to discuss the concerns of our drivers, and we also have our driver partner Tom Kirk here to ask questions for our drivers. Welcome, Dr. Teitelbaum. Thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Shelley, Tom, great to be with both of you and with all of the drivers out there. So we're going to teach you guys how to have healthy energy instead of having to reach for loan sharks, and also how to get pain-free.
Oh, that's awesome. For those who aren't familiar with you, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Basically, my background is internal medicine, and my main focus these days is treating people with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. I got into this back in 1975 when I came down with a nasty viral infection that I call the drop-dead flu. And just like we're seeing nowadays with post-viral chronic fatigue syndrome with COVID, many, really literally dozens of infections and viruses can trigger it. It actually knocked me out of medical school and left me homeless. I could barely get out of bed. I could barely function. Wow. I got well enough that I could hitchhike cross country and such, and I was sleeping in parks. But that was kind of the theater in which I learned how to treat this illness. I got myself better. Was able to go back to medical school, and I spent the last 45 years researching, writing, and teaching people how to recover from these conditions.
Why does it seem to be such a curiosity to the medical community on how to treat these things? It seems like you were very fortuitous in what you came up with.
Quite. It's as if God put a holistic homeless medical school sign on my park bench. It was funny, all these people came by, experts in different fields, and taught me. But here's the thing, whenever you have an illness that's very complex with no specific test for it, for example, pneumonia, you have a chest x-ray, it's abnormal, good. But when you have something where there's no test, and especially if it's complex and it affects predominantly women, the medical profession historically will treat that as hysteria. And you look at the word hysteria, which comes from hystero or uterus, to give an idea of the medical profession. We saw this with multiple sclerosis. It used to be called hysterical paralysis. We saw it with lupus. Rheumatoid arthritis used to be considered a neuroses. And now fibromyalgia is going through the same process.
Why is it so slow for the medical community to finally wake up and realize that those labels aren't working and these are legitimate conditions?
It comes down to the dollars. And the thing is that if there wasn't a very expensive treatment, say you had medicine for like $50,000 a year that had been approved for it, or like $25,000 a year even, suddenly there would be this massive push because you would have hundreds of millions of dollars behind it. But all the treatments we're going to talk about today, these are all cheap, they're low cost. And because of that, we have a quirk in our medical system, Shelley, and God bless us, we're a great country, but some of the laws that come out don't really work really well. I'm sure some of the drivers out there have seen some of the silliness in some of the regulations also. But in medicine, unless something is extremely expensive, it basically is not allowed into the medical system. It costs anywhere from $400 million to $2.4 billion for a single medication to get FDA approval, so you can advertise it for use to treat a condition, which means anything that's low cost, such as natural things and not patentable, or generic medications, you can't even, anybody with a financial tie can't even discuss the research.
Those are just jaw-dropping figures when you think about it, and it makes sense to go on the natural side because I would think the body metabolizes it better and more efficiently.
Absolutely. The body is used to it. We developed alongside these natural compounds and plants. Our body knows how to handle it, how to use it, and how to get rid of it if it doesn't want it. Most medicines are chemicals that have never been seen on the planet ever until a few decades ago or less. So that's very new stuff to the body. And what we're seeing, probably in my estimation, about 200 to 400,000 deaths a year from medications. And we're seeing, on the other hand, for example, Advil or ibuprofen medications, that whole family of NSAID arthritis medicines. The research shows about 50,000 US deaths a year from that one group alone, where with natural remedies, deaths are very rare.
So, your specialty is fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. For those not familiar, what conditions are those? Are those autoimmune? How do they start?
They basically represent an energy crisis where your body is called on to spend more energy than it's able to make, and you trip a circuit breaker in the brain. That circuit breaker is called the hypothalamus. It controls sleep. So suddenly you get the paradox of can't sleep even though you're exhausted. It controls your hormones across the board. It controls blood pressure, pulse, what's called autonomic function. So you have a major circuit breaker that goes offline, and that's what pushes people off the cliff. So whether it's infections, whether it's hormonal problems, whether it's severe life stress, whether it's nutritional deficiencies, just like there's hundreds of ways to trip a circuit breaker, there's hundreds of ways to trigger this condition.
So, drivers who are under a lot of stress and don't always sleep and eat the way they should, are they more vulnerable to these kinds of conditions, you think?
They can be, and they're also more vulnerable to pain because sometimes you're having to sit in one chair or one seat or doing a position where you're more prone to repetitive stress injury. And when you have poor sleep, pain, and you eat junk, that's a good recipe for an energy crisis.
Yeah, because there's nothing for the body to really run on.
Exactly. And we're going to teach you easy ways to get all the nutritional support you want in one drink a day. It just makes it really simple. And in terms of sugar, because sugar is not good for you, not the 140 pounds per person per year. But I have a sweet tooth. I love sweets. So we'll talk about how to get them in a way that's healthy. You want to keep your pleasure.
I had read somewhere that probably within the past 50 years anyway, a lot of the pre-prepared foods and all of that, they add more sugar. And that was actually a conscious decision from the manufacturers because they found people kept coming back because sugar is addictive.
It's quite addictive. Also, it's like Dr. Oz's daughter put it very simply. She said, anything else you process, if you take shirt, you take cotton, you turn it into fiber, the price goes up. You turn that fiber into shirt, the price of that goes up because you're putting work into it and the price goes up each step of the way. With processed foods, each step of the way, the price goes down, which means something is being taken out of that food and what's being left is junk. And when all you have in the food is junk, you got to load it with something so it doesn't taste like junk, like rotten stuff. So you load it with sugar. So it is addictive, and it's also meant to hide that what you're eating is basically, what's the medical term? Caca? Junk.
Okay.
You know?
And sugar is something that, because it's so addictive, it's hard to kick when you think about it. I mean, it's amazing, and people go for it because it's a quick and easy solution to get energy.
Hmm. Well, the thing is, there's four main things that drive sugar addiction in addition to just the taste and stuff.
Hmm.
So if you find that you get irritable when hungry, that's kind of hangry, you're kind of irritable when you reach for the candy bar,
Hmm.
um, that's that your adrenal stress handler gland is getting exhausted. And that's going to wreak havoc on your relationships to boot. So if you get that irritable when hungry, especially if you get recurrent colds or sore throats that seem to take forever to go away, adrenal support, one, increasing salt, increasing water. There are supplements. There's one I like called Adrenoplex. It's a mix of glandulars, vitamin C, vitamin B5, licorice, things like that. We'll smooth that right out. And again, Shelley, I'll tell you, it's much cheaper than a divorce lawyer or marriage counseling.
Oh, yeah. Yes, definitely. That's a good analogy. And would you say there are more hangry people out there today? Maybe.
I'd about a quarter of the population because of the stress of modern life. The news media has learned a new game, which is if we scare everybody to death and make them hate each other, it's really good for business. And it's really bad for listeners. And if you are listening or watching something where they're just trying to scare you to death and make you hate, if they leave you thinking that half the population is crazy, they're not. They just view things differently than we do. But by the time they're pushing that, I recommend you turn it off, or better yet, change stations to the trucker network where they don't do that to you.
There you go. We try to keep things positive and informative.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a bright side to life, not all of this crazy tune in at 6 to hear about murder and mayhem. We don't want to hear that stuff.
Life is awesome. The news sucks. Turn off the news.
There
Watch
you
life.
go. I would say that's a good philosophy.
Look out your windshield.
Absolutely. Well, and I would imagine this kind of thing can also lead to a lot of angry drivers, which our professional drivers deal with a lot.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of those have adrenal issues. Again, when you're reaching for sugar because you're irritable, not the hangry stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there are three other main triggers too that you'll see. There are other triggers. For example, some of us reach for sugar as an energy loan shark. So we'll talk about how to get healthy energy. If you have candida overgrowth with nasal congestion, sinusitis, irritable bowel syndrome, gas bloating, candida or yeast overgrowth, cut back to sugar, the natural antifungals, and hormonal deficiencies like low testosterone or estrogen, even with normal blood tests, will cause you to reach for that sugar. So you treat these things and the sugar cravings go away, and then you're on the road to feeling so much better.
How do you know if you have that? Because I don't think that's something most doctors test for. They go within baselines and stuff.
Well, for the women drivers, if you're feeling worse around your menses, I'm not talking about irritable or PMSy, that's just low progesterone. But if you're getting headache, bloating, weight gain, difficulty sleep, brain fog, these kind of things around your menses, then low estrogen is causing symptoms. And if you're in your mid 40s or higher, you should go to a holistic doctor who can address that.
Well, Dr. Teitelbaum, we have to go to break here. I definitely want to cover more of these things you're talking about and also have Tom Kirk, our driver, kind of chime in with some questions as well. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show on tncradio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly, and we're talking with Dr. Jacob Teitelbaum. Stay tuned for more. Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com. Welcome back to the Truckers Network radio show on tncradio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly and our driver partner, Tom Kirk. We're talking with Dr. Jacob Teitelbaum, who's an expert on pain and fatigue. And he's talking about a lot of the alternatives that we really should be looking into that can really help our drivers. Healthy energy is one of the topics you mentioned while we were on break, Dr. Teitelbaum. Could you tell us, how do we get healthy energy and what is that?
Well, it's important to understand the difference between putting gas in your tank or healthy energy versus cramming down on the gas pedal when you're running on fumes, and which is kind of like loan shark energy. So a lot of what we do, a cup of coffee or two, that's fine. That really can be healthy energy. Even 3 a day is fine. But when you're up to that second pot, you're kind of pushing it. Sugar is loan shark energy. It will make you more tired when you're all done. It'll give you a boost and then crash you. So healthy energy, a couple quick ways to begin. Number one, with all the vitamins and minerals we need. The American diet has lost over half of the vitamins and minerals in food processing because we have 18% of calories from sugar, 18% from white flour, and then step by step along the way, we've wiped them out. And especially B vitamins and magnesium are the backbone of energy production. Most multivitamins use the RDA, which I call ridiculous dietary allowances. They have enough vitamin D and vitamin C, say, to prevent scurvy and rickets, but they're not optimal. So I like ones for, personally, there's a vitamin powder called the Energy Revitalization System, where one drink replaces 30 to 50 pills a day. It just makes it really easy. For those who don't like drinks, there's a tablet called Clinical Essentials, or 2 a day, solid nutritional support. So it can be done easily, but you really want high levels of B vitamins, like 50 milligram B complex, 150 to 200 milligrams of magnesium. So number one, those simple nutrients. We've published 2 studies now using an energy nutrient called ribose, RIBOSE. That's the backbone of energy production in the body. And ribose by itself increased energy an average of 61%.
Wow.
Which, think about it, it looks and tastes like sugar. You can throw it in your coffee if you want. And it's just dramatic increase in energy. And there's something called the SMART energy system. It's a mix of the ribose and 5 herbs and nutrients, ashwagandha, rhodiola. Rhodiola was actually researched by the Russian Cosmonaut Agency because they found an increased stamina in their cosmonauts. The ashwagandha, one of the most popular herbs in India, because also it increases healthy energy and stamina. Licorice helps the adrenal support. The one caution I'll give is in those who have high blood pressure, I would not use the SMART energy system unless you're having a blood pressure monitor, because when you give adrenal support, the same with the adrenoplex I mentioned before, that can unmask. If your blood pressure is falsely low, it can make it go higher. Okay. So people with high blood pressure do that with caution. So it's called the SMART energy system. That and the energy revitalization system each morning, is 1 drink and 2 capsules, can in many people double energy. And this is all good, healthy energy. We just finished another study using a special form of ginseng called HRG80, red ginseng. And that one increased energy over 50%. That's what I do each day. And I would just keep that on your dashboard. And it's, but again, they have 4 different ones. I would get the chewables, not the one for sexual energy. And they have one of those too, but you could try that. But it's just the HRG80 red ginseng energy chewable tablet. And if I have a really busy day, I'll just pop one in my mouth and chew it. It tastes good. And I can feel the energy pick up right away, and it keeps the energy solid all day. So that's a nice one that you could do every day, or just kind of as needed when you need a boost.
Sure. So do people start feeling like they did as a kid?
Oh God, I don't want to go back to feeling like I did as a kid. It's when I asked my dad once if he could go back to being 30, would you do it? And he said, yeah. And he asked, do I have to give up everything I've learned? And I said, yeah. He said, hell no.
There you go. There you go.
So, I mean, I feel like I'm 31, and I was born a lot more than 31 years ago. And how old we are has very little to do with when we're born. It's more about how we feel and how we think also. So yeah, there's nothing that says you can't be, my goal for people is to have them die very young, but very late in life. And I figure I'll be 31 till the day I die.
There you go. That's a good philosophy too. Mr. Kirk, did you have some questions as a driver for Dr. Teitelbaum?
The question is where to start. But I know you were talking some about these healthy energy and B supplements and things like that. And I know that's something you hear a lot of drivers saying, oh, I use, whether it's 5-hour energy or this B supplement support or that supplement support that you can find in the truck stops. Are they good? Are they bad? What should we be looking for on the label, etc.?
If it says caffeine or similar related things, I just put it back. Basically, what I want to start with, because your question, Tom, is a perfect one. Where do I start? And you start with good overall nutritional support, which means, like, say, the multivitamins that are high. Look for a multivitamin that has 150 to 200 milligrams of magnesium and at least 40 to 50 milligrams of most of the B vitamins. That's how you know you're getting the key things you need for energy. You start there, you're going to be in good shape. You start with the basics, vitamin, minerals, and the other things we talked about, smart energy, and the red ginseng. These are the key herbals throughout history that have been most popular for energy, that have been around for thousands of years because they've been that good. But Tom, there's an acronym called SHINE. SHINE is kind of the abbreviation I use for the checklist for how to start making energy. So we talked about N for nutrition, but S is sleep. And the average night's sleep, most people don't realize that the average night's sleep until 150 years ago when light bulbs were invented was 9 hours a night. You think you're a sleep glutton. So if you can make the time for sleep, and I recommend you do so by getting rid of the things in your life you don't enjoy. If you're not going to go homeless and get arrested if you don't do it and it doesn't feel good, let it go. Cut it loose. Keep the things you enjoy because those are authentic to you. And then use that time that you free up for sleep. If you have trouble sleeping, herbals can be very good, especially having to do the license testing and such. So melatonin, I'll even go with a 10 milligram sustained release. There's one called EP120, which is a new one that's very good. Herbals, there's a mix of 6 herbs called the Revitalizing Sleep Formula. Leaves most people sleeping like kittens and puppies. There's a mix of 4 essential oils called Terrific ZZZZ. So simple things you can do that will help. And for those of you who tend to wake up in the middle of the night, not to pee, but just because it's kind of wide awake, you may be having a drop in blood sugar. Try a protein snack at bedtime, a hard-boiled egg, for example, and see if that helps you sleep a bit further into the night.
Does that help with insomnia also?
Yes, because you have to distinguish, Shelley, between falling asleep and staying asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're 2 kind of different things. So if you have trouble staying asleep, all the things you mentioned, including a protein, notice I'm emphasizing the word protein, snack at bedtime, can help you maintain sleep. For falling asleep, you can take the herbals and the melatonin, but I would just do it about 60 minutes before bedtime. What some people find, especially if you have high stress, is if your mind is wide awake and racing at bedtime so you can't fall asleep, that means your adrenal stress gland is having trouble shutting down so you can sleep at night. There's a supplement, it's called Sleep Tonight, but you can find it anywhere. It's called phosphatidylserine, S-E-R-I-N-E, about 200 milligrams, 60 to 90 minutes before bedtime. It'll turn off the adrenals and put them to sleep and kind of tuck them in for the night. So your brain will turn off and you can go to sleep at night as well.
Excellent. We have about 4.5 minutes before we have to go to break. Tom, did you have another question?
Yeah. One of the things, and I think you've sort of touched on this already, is a lot of truck drivers have high blood pressure, pre-diabetic, diabetic, etc. What are some of the things that we really should be looking at there? Because as you've kind of already mentioned, we get a lot of junk on the road. Trying, particularly since the start of the pandemic, finding good food anymore has become virtually impossible. I'm willing to bet if a truck driver has a refrigerator in their truck, it probably has cold cuts, hot dogs, cheese, things of that nature, because it's stuff that we can find relatively easily and has a bit of a shelf life. Trying to find fresh foods and vegetables of decent quality that isn't super expensive is hard. So what are some simple things that we can do in that case?
Number one, switch away from the sugars to, even if the only choice you have is junk, at least go for protein junk and switch away from the sugar and white flour that you can.
So things like nuts, beef jerky, even though it may be high in salt, things of
exactly. And salt is not a major player for blood pressure. If you have a low salt diet, you lower your blood pressure about 2 millimeters. This is not a lot. You go from 140 over 80 to 138 over 79. It's not a big change. But if you increase potassium intake, that will help blood pressure. But let's talk about, because Tom, you put together an interesting mix. This is very common. High blood pressure, a spare tire around the abdomen, high cholesterol, and prediabetes or diabetes. That quartet is called metabolic syndrome. That's very, very, very common. And if you're a truck driver and you're over 40, a major trigger for metabolic syndrome is, how women go through menopause and their estrogen and progesterone drops, and they're going through that for about 5 to 12 years before the blood tests become overtly low and they stop having their menses. Well, most men go through menopause, which is where testosterone levels drop. And low testosterone is a major trigger for metabolic syndrome, even if the test is normal, because to be normal, you have to be in the lowest 2% of the population. That's how normal is defined. It's a statistical thing to take 100 people, the 5 the 95 in the middle of the normal range. So a normal shoe size would be size 5 to 13. So for you truck driving guys out there who have a size 12 foot like me or 13, if I put you in a size 7 shoe, the doctor's going to say your shoe is fine. It's in the normal range. And if you go in with a testosterone of 400 and you're having problems with testosterone functions and you're seeing cholesterol going up and blood sugar going up and weight going up, that the low testosterone is a major trigger for that. Now, I'm not saying to use the street poisons, testosterone, but bioidentical testosterone you can find it from holistic physicians is very, very healthy. And I will treat, if the testosterone level is under 540, Tom, and people are having high cholesterol, high blood pressure, spare tire, prediabetes, I'm going to put them on the bioidentical testosterone. And that often makes a major difference in bringing those things down.
Interesting. We have to go to break here, Dr. Teitelbaum. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I really appreciate it. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show here on TNCRadio.live. Stay tuned for more information from Dr. Teitelbaum coming up. Great leaders challenge their people not to stop at the first right answer. Tighten the Lug Nuts is the book that will help you move past that first right answer to be more effective, more productive, and more successful. This book serves as a blueprint that can be easily applied by leaders, entrepreneurs, truckers, owner-operators, all of us in our everyday lives. This is one of the best leadership books you can read to help you accelerate towards your personal and professional goals. Plus, a portion of the proceeds will be donated to truckerschristmasgroup.org. Visit TightenTheLugNuts.com to order your copy today. Welcome back to the Truckers Network radio show here on TNCRadio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly, and we have Tom Kirk with us today, too. We're talking with Dr. Jacob Teitelbaum, who's an expert on pain and fatigue, who's been sharing some terrific information. Mr. Kirk, you said you had some questions for Dr. Teitelbaum.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk among drivers about what's healthy, not healthy. So let's just start off with the keto diet. There's a lot of drivers who push it really hard, saying this is the only way to live. We have other drivers who say, oh, no, it's not healthy for whatever set of reasons. What's your opinion?
Tom, there's no one food or diet that's best for everybody. That's why I think God or nature or whatever you want to call it has created this incredible abundance and variety of foods on the planet, because we all need different things at different times. And the way you tell what works best for you is how does it make you feel? And I'm not saying right after you can drink a 64-ounce Big Burp soda and feel really good until you crash later and you feel like hell later. So overall, what works for you is a thing to look at. By and large, eating whole, healthy foods is really a wise way to go. The keto diet is a very good, healthy diet for many people. And again, see how it makes you feel. Some people get depressed and low energy on it, then it's not for you. Other people feel fantastic. Start to listen to your body. Tom, your body is the best expert on you in the world. And it's time to start listening to it, see what works for you. How does that feel? How does it work out for you? That will tell you. I'll point you in the right direction.
That makes a lot of sense. Is perhaps probably the best answer I've ever heard yet. The other thing that's kind of going around, and I think this is more than just truck driving circles, is vaccines. And let's just not talk COVID for a second, but let's talk things like the traditional flu vaccine, pneumonia vaccine. There's groups that say, oh, no, if you take vitamin D or this supplement or that supplement, you don't need a vaccine. And there's other groups who say, oh, no. You can use those natural things to support, but you still need your vaccine. Is there a right answer? Is there a wrong answer? What's your opinion on that?
Oh, I do the middle path. First of all, Tom, I think that if you look at modern medicine, the main areas that are improvements over 100 years ago are antibiotics, vaccines, emergency medicine, like you have an appendicitis or something, and giving childbirth, and that we have toilets instead of throwing our poo in the street. Those are the four things. Most of the other things, it's a question if it's done more harm than good. But that vaccines have been a real blessing does not mean that we should turn our children into pincushions or that we should ignore the downsides of the vaccines. Vaccines are not without risks and they carry issues. So would I want my kids, did I have my kids do the polio vaccine? Absolutely. Do I get the flu vaccine each year? Never in my life, nor do I intend to. I don't think it's necessary for me. But if somebody wants to, they can. Did I do the COVID vaccine? I did the single dose vaccine because I wanted to visit my newest grandchild who's born in Europe, and I couldn't get into the country. So it was worth it for me to do that. Is it reasonable for people to take the vaccine? I think it's very reasonable. Is it going to kill everybody? No, it isn't. Is it totally safe? No, it isn't. But I think it's reasonable. In terms of my politics, as I mentioned off the air, my politics is that the right wing and left wing are part of the same bird. This whole thing about ripping our country apart is, we don't need the Russians to be spreading misinformation. We're doing a perfectly good job ourselves. We don't need to be blaming anybody else.
Absolutely. With the media, oh my goodness, yes.
So for the vaccine, for those of you who are 60 and over, certainly go get the vaccine if you haven't yet, if you feel comfortable. I would get the Johnson & Johnson. It's safer. It's a single dose. And despite the misinformation in the media, that's what I took myself. In terms of getting the booster, even though I'm 31, I was born 69 years ago, I'm not getting the booster. But for the vaccines, I think it's a good idea for the kids to get the basic things. Measles, mumps, rubella, preferably not all at the same time. The polio vaccine, tetanus vaccine, these are ones that I'm certainly going to get. The meningitis vaccine. But beyond those, a lot of the other ones that the Vaccine of the Month Club, no, I'm not signing up.
Yeah, it does seem like kids get a ton of vaccines now that they didn't get 40 years ago.
And again, it's important to know which ones are critical and which ones not. Now, I will note for the COVID, I do want to put out there's a whole question of what you are finding is that there's enormous misinformation on both sides. What I am seeing, looking just at the research and ignoring the politics and the media, because I have seen more misinformation. And it's funny, I tease because I'm on both sides. They like me so far in the media. Maybe they haven't heard what I say about them. But the thing is that if you're looking at things like ivermectin, Plaquenil, Luvox, these work. These are effective treatments for COVID vaccines, except here's the thing. The research that has been done, it takes massive studies. The average study presented to the FDA costs $17 million to do because you have to have enough people in them to get what's called statistical significance. Right. And without that, some doctors, like at the NIH, will say that there's no evidence, even if you have a dozen studies. The NIH would say that there's no evidence that parachutes work. And using the definition of no randomized double-blind placebo-controlled studies that show statistical significance, blah, 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 that's their definition. Yes, there's no evidence parachutes work. But if I'm on a plane that's going down, and I had a study of 30 people who did parachutes and none of them died, and 30 who didn't do parachutes and they all died, but it wasn't statistically significant, or it wasn't randomized or placebo-controlled, I'm going to take the parachute. So even though you have experts saying there's no evidence, you have to understand what no evidence means. No evidence, even though the studies show it decreases deaths 30 to 70%, but they are not the massive studies needed for statistical significance. So by playing with the definitions, you're seeing on one side saying no evidence, the others have, how about the stack of studies? And to me, I'm going to apply common sense along with science. And the common sense says these medicines are cheap and safe. And there's a 85 to 90% probability they decrease deaths by 30 to 70%. Sign me up.
Yeah.
So I think these are reasonable. So I would take the vaccine, especially for those over 50, even over 50, but certainly over 60. I'm not doing the boosters except for people at high risk. And I do give ivermectin and Luvox at first sign of COVID.
Okay. We have about 3 minutes. I thought maybe we could touch on the long hauler syndrome that a lot of people who have suffered through COVID, they're experiencing these long haul symptoms. What do they do to feel better?
Well, for those of you who may have had COVID and 2 months later, you're still feeling lousy, especially with fatigue and insomnia, brain fog, achiness, you have post-viral chronic fatigue syndrome. Because by 2 months, it should be pretty much going. 3 months, I'd say certainly you do have it. And all that long haulers is post-viral chronic fatigue syndrome. Same thing we've been treating for decades. So if you go to your doctor, most doctors know virtually nothing about it because there's no expensive treatment for it. You have to understand, Shelley, doctors are really good people. And the people in medicine, the people in the news, all of these are good people. But sometimes the institutions have problems. And the problem with medicine is that if something is cheap, there's no way, not just will doctors not hear about it, it is actually written into the law that they can't.
Oh.
You cannot discuss, if you have any financial tie to a product, you cannot discuss the research on that product without paying the FDA $400 million to $2.2 billion per product to talk about the research, which means all that can be talked about by anybody. Now, if you're like me and you don't really have a financial tie, well, you talk about it all you want. But,
right. Yeah.
but when each drug is having 70 million of advertising a year, it's basically the doctors won't hear about it.
Right.
So if you have long haulers, you need to go to somebody who knows chronic fatigue syndrome. And usually that means a holistic doctor. You can go to the Institute for Functional Medicine or F like Frank, M like Mary.org and find a list of thousands of doctors nationwide who are more likely to be familiar. They may not know much about it yet, but at least you'll be having a good start with them.
And these are actual medical doctors that,
Yes.
Okay. And I would assume that they would run some different kinds of tests that you wouldn't necessarily find with a traditional doctor to give you answers on what's going on with your system. And
they run different tests, but more importantly, they know how to interpret the tests. It's funny, I'll lecture to 400 or 500 docs at a time, and I love asking that question. Where does the normal range come from? And it's like looking at 400 pair of deer eyes in the headlights looking back at me. It's like, I don't know. I guess there's a committee of wise elders with long white beards that get together and say if it's in this range, it's normal or something like that. No such thing. As I mentioned earlier, you take 100 people, apply a statistical term called 2 standard deviations. That means a 95 in the middle are defined as normal. If you have an income of $8,100 a year, you would be defined as normal medically, even though poverty is under $16,000 a year. Most doctors have no idea what the normal means. And they figure if your blood test is in the bottom 3% of the population, you're normal. That's nonsense. If you're tired, achy, weight gain, cold intolerant, and your thyroid is in the lowest 5% of the population, that's not normal, although the doctor will say that it is.
Interesting. So you get kind of caught up in a situation as a patient, not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you still feel lousy.
Yeah. So, but again, what I'm trying to do is point people in the right direction here. I'm not trying to make you hopeless. I'm trying to empower you.
Oh, absolutely.
With the information. And so a simple way to begin, there's a phone app. It's called CURES or Cures, capital A-C. It's a free phone app. It's a $2 upgrade. Go for it. But it'll have 100 conditions from acne to zoster. And it'll give you a good start on here's what the natural approaches are.
Excellent.
We had over 1 million people downloaded it. So that will give you a start with things. You'll find that the Life Extension Foundation, if you look that up, you can look up health conditions. They do a very good job giving a balanced reporting because there's some groups that it's just idiocy on both sides. Harvard, everything natural is nonsense and quackery. No, it isn't. And the other side, medications are the devil. No, it's not.
Right.
Look at what the science shows, and that there are people like me who will do that without this bias to one side or the other. What works? What's safe? That's what I'm looking for. What has good science behind it?
Wonderful. Thank you for that information. We have to go to break here, Dr. Teitelbaum. You're listening to the Truckers Network radio show here on TNCRadio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly and our driver, Tom Kirk. We'll be back with more, so stay tuned. Did you know that 80% of America's communities rely on trucking alone to deliver their goods? The trucking industry keeps America running thanks to the 3.6 million professional truck drivers traveling over 300 billion miles a year. Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward, or TMAF, tells the story of trucking and its positive impact on our economy, communities, and lives. Learn how you can be part of the industry movement working to build a strong image of trucking by visiting truckingmovesamerica.com. This is a very special shout out to all our truckers. From Starcom Racing's Quinn Hoff on TNCRadio.live.
I just wanted to give a special shout out to all the truckers out there listening. There's a lot of storms out there. Just stay safe. And I appreciate everything they do for our country. Like I said, that I don't know if you guys heard earlier, without trucks, America stops moving. And I know that well myself, coming from a family trucking business. And, obviously everyone needs truck drivers. So if you need a truck driving position, be sure to check out House Transfer. And I appreciate you.
Welcome back to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelly and Tom Kirk. We're talking with Dr. Jacob Teitelbaum, who's an expert on pain and fatigue. He's been giving us all kinds of wonderful information. Dr. Teitelbaum, what should drivers look for if they're looking for a doctor? What makes a good doctor for most anyone, including drivers?
Well, first of all, you want to start with a regular doctor because they're going to be covered by your insurance. Once you see who is covered by your insurance panel, then what you want to do is ask around with your friends and stuff. And you give out names and see, which ones, when you mention that name, everybody's face lights up, and which ones look like they're about to throw up. So you want to go to the people that people love. Then when you go to the doctor, you see how it feels. Trust your instincts again. Does it feel comfortable for you to be with them? If so, you're in a good place. But understand, you're not going to come to me for heart bypass surgery, and you're not going to go to most doctors for pain or fatigue because they're just not trained in doing these, and certainly not chronic fatigue syndrome. So start with the doctor for day-to-day things. If you have something that they can't help you with, and the specialist that's covered by your insurance can't help you with, that's the time to go look for a holistic doctor. Or if you just prefer to go naturally, then you can go to local health food stores, wherever your home base is, and ask them. Don't ask the person behind the counter. They may have been working for 2 weeks and barely know how to scratch their behind. Ask for the manager. Ask for the manager or owner and ask them, who are the best holistic doctors around? And tell them what it is you're looking for, what kind of problem, because everybody has different specialties. Then when you go there, again, see how it feels. I'm going to say this over and over again. Your intuition, how things feel to you, is going to tell you more, because it's tailored totally to you, than all of the advice I can give you. Excellent. I'll point you in the direction, but but at the end of the day, listen to what feels best to you. And if you can't find any recommendations, go to ifm.org.
Okay. Great information.
But I will note, with holistic doctors, some are brilliant and some are whack. So listen to your instincts, just like with any other doctor.
Good to know. Now, Dr. Teitelbaum, you were going to talk a little bit about pain. What can you share with our drivers on that?
Okay, 1/3 of Americans suffer needlessly with chronic pain. And now that we have a war on people in pain, we're going after the narcotics being prescribed and the rest. And it's obviously successful, because drug deaths went up from 44,000 a year to 66,000 the next year, and to over 100,000 this year. So the war is working, damn it. Oh, no, those numbers are supposed to go the other way.
Yeah.
Well, it was something else causing that,
Right.
Look, we're treating people with pain like drug addicts. They're not. They're people in pain. They need help. My focus is narcotic-free drug relief, because to me, if you have the oil light going on your rig, you're not sitting there and, the doctors say, well, put a Band-Aid over it. That's better, right? And then you wonder why the motor burns out later. Right. That's how pain is like that. Pain is like the oil. It's not an outside invader. It's like the oil light on our body's dashboard saying something needs attention. You put oil in, the oil light goes out. You give your body what it needs, the pain goes away. This is what my research has shown for over 40 years now. And so our approach is, what is the pain telling you? So 4 things. Let's take a look at joint pain. So that tends to be inflammatory. It can be muscular too. But I'm going to give things that have been shown in the research. There's a mix of 4 herbs. My favorite is called Curamin, Curamin. I would write that one down, Curamin. You can get it Amazon, you can get it in most health food stores. Give it 6 weeks. head-on studies that was as or more effective than the Celebrex, which is a medication that that family of medications kills 50,000 Americans a year, but won't hear about that in the media because they advertise. So you start with that. There's another mix called End Pain that's synergistic. You can use topical comfrey cream and rub it over the areas. After 6 weeks, that was also as effective as the medications. So those are 3 really good ways to begin for most pain, because they will settle down the inflammation, increase the wound healing. Let's look at migraine headaches. Those of you with migraines, if you take vitamin B2, 400 milligrams a day, that's riboflavin, get it at any health food store, plus magnesium, 200 milligrams a day, migraine frequency goes down by over 75%.
Wow.
Okay, simple things, because you're given what's needed for energy production, those blood vessels. Nerve pain, you can help, burning kind of pain going into the extremities. Lipoic acid and acetyl L-carnitine has been shown in the studies to be quite helpful. So if you look at, you can just go to the Cures, CURES, capital A-C. I don't talk about the brands there, but I'll talk about kind of the components, so you can put it together yourself. And you look up each type of pain: arthritis, neuropathy, migraines, headaches, irritable bowel syndrome. You can look up whatever kind of pain, and it'll give you the recipe.
Excellent. We have about 2 minutes left, Dr. Teitelbaum. Where do people reach out to you? Do you consult long distance? Can people reach out to you?
I treat people worldwide with chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia. You can go to my website for information, vitality101.com. For other things, End E, so it'll be E, N like Nancy, D like David, fatigue.com. And for appointments, you can email appointments with an S at the end at End Fatigue. So that's E, N like Nancy, D like David, fatigue.com. And my appointment manager, Sarah, would be happy to give you a hand.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show, Dr. Teitelbaum. I really do appreciate it here on TNCRadio.live. Our drivers really can use this information, and I think you've been very helpful. Don't you agree, Mr. Kirk?
Well,
without a doubt.
You know those guys hitchhiking on the side of the road that your truckers are picking up? I have a couple 100,000 miles on my thumb. I would go cross country quite a bit in my youth. So I just want to thank you all, and hoping I'm giving back just a little bit to all you guys today.
Well, thank you, and we do appreciate it very much. You're listening to TNCRadio.live. This has been the Truckers Network Radio Show. Stay tuned for more coming up. Thank you for listening to another great interview on TNCRadio.live and the Truckers Network Radio Show. All of the material you hear on TNCRadio.live, on our website, our broadcasts, or our podcasts are copyrighted. There can be no distribution without the express consent of TNCRadio.live and its partners. For inquiries, write us at info@tncradio.live.